Okay, so now that we've created the mockup, and again, this is a really simple site, but this does give them the client a picture view of what the site would look like before you code it. Now, you can change some things about that, especially if they wanted to make some changes. But let's say I don't always want to have this picture in the background, then that's easily changed. And this slideshow might not actually be the picture we use in the slideshow. But for right now, we need to create the assets to actually start creating the site. So I'm going to go to my background image, and a lot of people slice and dice this, and they use these cut tools under the crop tool to sort of slice these things out, but I don't do that because I don't want this logo to have the semi-transparent and this photo behind it, because I might want to switch this photo out. So I like to create them as separate pieces. But if you look on YouTube, there's a bunch of videos on kind of using creating a Photoshop mockup and how you can slice and dice or actually use that mockup to create the entire structure of your website. So I'm going to go into the background picture, and I'm going to grab my crop tool, and I know that my site, the mockup is 1920 by 1080. Now, some people might have smaller browser width, depending on the resolution or the monitor size that they're looking at, and they might have something way bigger than that. So we can never really design to make it perfect for every single site, and if you try to, it would take forever. So we're going to just design for the majority of sites. We're going to make this blurry so it's going to look good at a lower quality or a lower file size, and it should be able to expand or stretch depending on how big somebody's browser is. But we're going to start with a standard size. So I'm going to grab my crop tool and choose the width, height, resolution option so that I can choose a specific size. And I want to put 1920 px. Don't forget to put the px. If you put inches, or if you don't put px, it'll assume it's inches, and then your computer is going to freak out. So, and then I want to put 1080 px for height. And because this is going to be seen digitally, we can do 72 resolution. Retina displays, you'd want something bigger. But for right now, we're just going to do 72 pixels per inch. So then we can move and we can resize our cropping area if we were wanting to focus in a bit more. But I think that's pretty good. I might want some more of the forest floor, but I don't want to get rid of that sun right there. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. So I'll click this accept button. And there's my site background. Now it looks smaller, but that's because we're still at 25% zoom. So if we do Command or Control plus, we can zoom in, and there it is at 100%. So this is a lot of detail, and you could choose to keep it or not. But again, if you keep the detail, you have to do a higher file size. So for me, I'm actually going to go up to the filter menu and choose Convert for Smart Filters. If for some reason you can't click this, it's probably because this is a smart object, and you could tell because it'll have like this little icon right here. So you can right click on this and choose rasterize image or rasterize layer, and that will go away. And then you should be able to come up here and choose Convert for Smart Filters. So what that's going to do is when we add our blur, we want to be able to come back to it and change how blurry it is if, you know, the client says it's too blurry or it's not blurry enough. So we'll go up to filter, and yours probably won't say Gaussian blur, but it says this because this is the last one I used. But we'll go to blur and choose Gaussian blur. And I think some people call it like Gaussian or Gaussian. I don't even know what it's actually supposed to be called, but I call it Gaussian. So this is way too blurry. It actually creates a pretty cool textured background, and it's going to be easier to see text on this. But I do want people to kind of see that it is a forest background, so you can choose that. That looks like not blurry enough, so it almost looks like a mistake or like low quality. So I do want it to look blurry enough to look intentional, like this is exactly how I wanted it to look, how I intended it to look. So I'm going to click OK, and the great thing about this is I can double click on here and I can change the Gaussian blur to make it more or less blurry in the future because I had that smart filter. So there's one background image, so I can go to File, Export, Save for Web, and I'm going to call this forest background. And I didn't just call it background because I might put different, like a beach background in the summer. So for right now, I want to choose JPEG because this is millions of colors, so we can't use a GIF. And it is a square or rectangle, and it has no need for transparency, so I don't want to use ping because ping is going to give me too big of a file size. So the great thing about this is if you have something with millions of colors, it doesn't need transparency, and it's a square rectangle, then we can make it a JPEG. And the JPEG, even though right now it's at a high file size, that's going to take forever to load. But if we come over here to quality, we can pull that quality down to 55 and not really see any actual loss in quality. But now instead of being 500K, it's 164K. So it's going to load really fast for users. So I can go ahead and make this even smaller. Now you don't want to go too small because you can start to see the pixelation. So you don't want it to look low quality, but you do want to find that nice balance between file size and quality. So I can see some little areas. I don't know if you can see them on your screen, but I probably want to do about 57. That's 163K. That's fine with me. So I'll go ahead and do save and make sure it's in my project folder. I don't want to put it in the originals, but I actually want to put it up here with the index and the style CSS. Now, sometimes I actually make a folder in here called images because, dang it, I just clicked on one of my programs, so you're going to see Keynote open randomly for no reason. So, see, all right, so we're going to go ahead and name this something a little bit easier. So I'm going to do forest background. And if you wanted to, you can create that folder called images. This is going to be a really simple site, so I don't really need to do an intense folder structure. So I'll go ahead and hit save. All right. So looking at the mockup, I also have this slideshow image, and I'll probably create a lot of slideshow images because a slideshow by nature has multiple images in it. But for right now, I'm just going to do one sample image so that I can get that into the space and make it look right. So we're going to go up here to our image, and right now it's on width height resolution 1920 by 1080 at 72. So we want to keep it at width height resolution, but our slideshow is going to be 960 pixels wide because that's how big our site is, and 320 pixels tall. So now I can click in here and I can crop however I think that crop looks good, and accept that transformation, hit enter, return. Again, it's 16.67% zoomed in, so I can zoom in until it's 100%, and that looks pretty good to me. So again, file, export, save for web, and I'm going to pull down the quality until I get a good file size, but it still looks good quality. So 50 is not bad, it's 83K, so put that with the background image, and we got like 250Ks that people have to download now. So I'm going to call this France Elephant Rock Slider. So I might have a beach slider and a New York City slider, but I always put the word slider. And in fact, what I actually do is I put slider in the front so that because this is going to organize these alphabetically, so all the slider images are stacked together. So we'll go ahead and hit save for that. All right, so the last kind of image we need to create, and I'm going to get out of the crop tool by going to the move tool, is the logo. So in reality, I would actually find the logo for the client, and then I would have the text, and maybe the logo included the text, so I wouldn't have to do anything with it, just make it the size I want to make it. So for right now, because we're creating a fake layout, we'll go to File, New. And even if I did have their logo, I would have to create a new document at the size I want it. So again, my site is 960, and I probably want the width to be, or the height to be like 150 or 200. So I'm going to probably make the logo, and maybe it's not going to be a full 960. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it 700. And I'm going to make the height 150. And if I need to change that later, I can. I'm going to go ahead and click create. And I don't want a background color right now because I want it to be transparent. But if I take this background off, it's going to show, and you have to like unlock it first, like drag that lock down and then throw it away. Well, it won't do that because I need something on there. So I'm going to click this little half and half circle, and you can't see it, but I'm going to choose solid color. And I'm going to choose black because I can't see, if I have white text on a white background, I won't be able to see this. But now I can throw the background away, and I can either retype and remake the shape here, which is absolutely fine, or I can come in here and say, here's the logo file. I'm going to click, hold shift, and then click on the shape that makes up the logo. And then I can either copy it, or I can click and drag this to the new document and hover over, I'm still holding the mouse button, hover over your surface and then drop to let it go. So that looks like a pretty darn good, dang, that's never happened before. That's the exact size that I needed. Okay. So now that I've got that on there, and you could tweak it, you could change the font size now, and you could actually put the actual logo, etc. And at any point, if you needed to change the size, you could go up to image and choose canvas size and choose, change it to pixels. And if I needed it to be smaller, like I didn't need all this extra space, I could take this down to 150, or I mean to 100, or I could also do relative, like if I wanted to add a couple of pixels, like 200 pixels to the height or something, then I could put it here. So just play with those settings, and you're not going to hurt it, because you can always either click OK and it does something weird, and then you just do Command or Control Z to step back one. Okay. So now that I have that in there, I'm going to turn off the background. So you can see there's a little bit of white, but I want it to be transparent, because you never know. Right now, it's going to be semi-transparent back here. But I might want to make, right now it's black, and I might want to later make it blue or make it orange or whatever the case may be. So I do want it to be transparent. Now, because it's only one color, I can do GIF when I go to File, Export, Save for Web. I can save this as a GIF image. See how a JPEG is not going to save the transparency? But a GIF image is going to have like pixelated, it's called the matte here. And I don't want to have those kind of rough edges. And sometimes those rough edges are not noticeable. But in this case, it is going to be noticeable. If I zoom in, I don't know if you guys can see all these kind of like half pixels that are around the edges. Or here you go. See how they're like weird like this? So sometimes you can't see those, but because it's like white on black, you're going to see them a lot. Now, because this is going to be on black, I can make the matte black, and it's going to do this. So it's going to take those edge pixels and it's going to try to make it blend in with black. But my black is not a solid black, so it's still going to look really weird. So I'm going to say none, and it would look jagged even if you chose that. So I'm going to choose ping 24. And as you can see on ping 24, when I zoom in, see how it has like levels of transparency and it gets really soft around the edges of this text? That's going to make it a really high quality. Well, I don't know what I just did. All right. Well, I did not know Command 0 also worked in Save for Web. Now I know. Okay. So I'm going to just leave it like this, and it's super zoomed in, but I'm going to zoom out and save it as ping 24. And I'm going to call this temporary logo, or you could just call it logo. I would usually call it temporary if I was waiting for the client to give me the logo. Again, I'm saving it in the project folder, and go ahead and hit save. And now we have all the assets. The rest is going to be created with CSS. So in Dreamweaver, now we need to start getting ready to actually take our structure that is ugly with all these colors right now, and we need to start adding all the pretty back in.